Hi, my name is Rebecca Martinez Fitzgerald. I'm a licensed clinical social work associate and therapist using EFT in Durham, North Carolina. It's National Hispanic Heritage Month in the United States, so it's as good a time as any to recognize the contributions and influence of Latinx and Hispanic Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. Today, I'm talking to Sarai Kanich. Sarai, hi, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, so I'm Sarai Kanich. I'm a marriage and family therapist associate, and I'm a couples and sex therapist at Awakenings Counseling in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I've been working using EFT for about 2.5 years now. And the majority of my clients, I would say, are English speakers, but I do advertise and offer services in Spanish for, where both partners are Hispanic, or for interracial couples where one partner is Hispanic and the other partner might be an English speaker.
Awesome. And Sarai, I know you've spent pivotal years of your life growing up in Mexico and in the US. What have you noticed about the way emotions are valued and talked about in each culture?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been kind of noticing and really coming to terms with, I think, in my practice when I'm working with English speakers and then Hispanics as well, is that here there seems to be a bigger shift towards taking care of one's emotional and mental health. Whereas I think in Mexico, where I'm from, that shift has not been made just yet for the majority of the population. So what that means is that in general, therapy is still very taboo in the Hispanic culture. And so it is not something that people seek out. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that, especially for men, asking for that type of help is very, it's hard. And they don't, a lot of the times what I've heard is, I don't need help. I'm fine. We're good. And that comes especially from the men. So that brings me to the other difference that I noticed. I think in the Hispanic culture, there is still the very much a macho mentality. So talking about emotions for men is definitely not something that that is socially acceptable. I think the only socially acceptable emotions that men are able to have are mainly anger or happiness. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be able to share and definitely not show sadness or fear or any other kind of things, even worry, which is another one of the reasons why they don't seek help, even more so than the women. And I think the other thing that I've really started to notice is that, we describe the Hispanic culture as being very family-centered and they value family. But I think one of the things that I've noticed is that while we do feel close to our family, I don't think that we are taught, and it's not encouraged, to actually be emotionally vulnerable with our family. So emotionally open about how we're feeling and to have those feelings be accepted. I think we're just taught to kind of push through our feelings, and so that's another one of those considerations. I feel like nowadays, especially here in America, I've seen more of that shift towards accepting and acknowledging kids' emotions and our own emotions and things like that. So those are the big differences I think I've seen.
Cool. And so, you just described that, there might be feelings of love and loyalty among families, but maybe not necessarily the norms around emotional vulnerability. Are you seeing that in couples that you treat as well?
Yes. Yeah. So with the couples work that I do, a big thing that I notice is that, I've heard it many times before, especially from the men. They come to therapy and they're like, I don't really know why we're here. I know that, she's not very happy, but, I'm a good husband because I'm a good provider, because I help her around the house, because I am not cheating. So there is definitely not the awareness of being close emotionally and being open about how we actually feel, those very vulnerable, emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I imagine too, that might mean that one partner is much more open to the therapeutic work at first, maybe than the other.
Yes. Yeah. Usually that, from my experience anyways, it tends to be the women that are kind of like, we need to do this. Let's go. And the men are there and they're like, I mean, I'm going to work, but I don't understand, I feel like she's just the unhappy one. And I don't really know what I'm doing wrong. And again, what makes that part difficult working with like the men versus the women would be that, when you're working with EFT, you're definitely trying to find those primary emotions. And a lot of the times the men especially don't even have words for the emotions. They don't have the vocabulary that they need. And it's getting their buy-in for the need to express or acknowledge their own emotions is very difficult sometimes.
Okay, that makes sense. So
yeah.
Now, how do you approach work with couples where one partner speaks English, maybe American born, they speak English as their first language, while the other maybe grew up speaking Spanish?
Yeah, that does present some challenges, I think, that I was not aware of that they would come up. But I was thinking about this with my couples, it's very hard to stay in the present and to really stay in that process, that we're taught in EFT to stay with the emotion. And a lot of the times what happens is especially if you have one where's an English speaker and the Hispanic who's a Spanish speaker, they have to take the time. It's like they have to, almost like there's a shift from going from your emotions and feeling them to then going up to your brain so you can translate what it is that you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And, I'm considered to be a native English speaker and Spanish speaker. So I'm very comfortable speaking in English myself, but I have a really hard time expressing my emotions in English. Because I've heard this term before, so I'm not going to take any, I'm not going to make it my own, but I've heard of the language of the heart, what the emotions that you feel, what language they be in. So for me, it is Spanish. And so that's another consideration, is that even if I, who am comfortable speaking in English, have a hard time expressing myself in English, I can't imagine for couples, for a person, an individual whose second language is English, and who they might not have the words. And so then you have to come out of that emotional process to go into, what is the word, what in that can be challenging sometimes. And the other thing that I've noticed too, I've had a couple of clients where this has happened, is even if I speak Spanish, so I can say, hey, okay, and I can see that you're struggling with this. Tell me it in Spanish, and then I can help, right? Mm-hmm. And I can see the anxiety that the partner can experience from that, because the partner doesn't know Spanish. So in that moment, it's almost like, what are they going to say about me? Or what are they going to say about their feeling that I want to know? And what if I don't catch it? What if I don't understand it? Can I trust my therapist to actually tell me what my partner told me or is telling her? And so that can bring up some anxiety for some partners, and it has happened to me in sessions before.
Yeah. Wow. And then there's even more to explore and process.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So one last question is, what do you want other EFT practitioners to know about working with couples where one or both members are Hispanic or Latino?
Yeah. Well, kind of related to what I was just talking about, I think one of the we have to be prepared to kind of go slower than normal. And I know that this is something that you hear in EFT trainings all the time, is to slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. But I feel like, because again of the language barriers and those other considerations, having to, start teaching, one of them, the vocabulary around their feelings and getting their buy-in to talk about their feelings and how that might be helpful, all of that might make the process a little bit longer. So we just have to be prepared to go slower and probably longer with them. And of course, there is going to be a lot of variation, because there can be different acculturation levels. There might be differences from the countries that they're born. So even if you have two Hispanic couples, they might be very different culturally from each other. So that's something to be aware of. And then also, of course, each one's family of origin is going to be very different from the other, even if they're from the same country. So it can really, you have to be aware of those things.
Cool. Well, Sarai Kanich, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.